to strike the count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swing and a drive, deep left field. This is way back. Walk the ball. Chris Taylor.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight, as I am every Sunday night, by Matt Moreno. Matt, a crazy week. Let's talk. I mean, this game, we normally these Sunday nights are like 12 hours after a game has finished. We had Sunday night baseball and then like a 7-hour game, so we're just wrapping up now. Have you gotten your thoughts straight after this sort of a up and down wild victory today on Sunday?
Yeah, a little bit. First, I'll start off by apologizing to our viewers for running late. I know we told them 9:15, and we're closer to 9:30 now. We needed to get the post-game interviews up, so that way, once we're done here, everybody could stick around on our YouTube channel and check those out. In terms of the actual game, it was strange. When little frustrating, I guess, when they couldn't get anything going against Clevenger, and then they finally took their 5-1 lead, and you kind of thought, okay, like, this is kind of, the Padres, that one blooper that Trey Turner hit and it bounced away. You're thinking like the Padres have kind of mailed it in. And that didn't end up happening. But then, the Dodgers pulled away late. And so it's kind of, in some sense, it was more of what we've seen where, the Dodgers have been able to tack on and just kind of not blow teams out, but get a comfortable win. Yeah. And at the end of the day, you take 2 of 3, and now here we are. The magic number is down to 9.
Yeah, crazy stuff for the Dodgers. Here's the plan. Again, this is not going to be a typical post-game show. This is our weekly DodgerHeads show, a full hour just breaking down the week that was, looking ahead to the week that is. Lots to do today. So whether you're catching this live, thank you for joining us on YouTube or Facebook. We appreciate you. Please throw some comments. We're going to get to some live questions there. We'll be here just about every Sunday night at 9 p.m., so make sure to sort of mark that on your calendar as a regular thing the rest of the year. If you're checking this out the day after, whether on YouTube or as part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network on Spotify or Google or Apple Podcasts, we appreciate you as well. Please subscribe, rate, review, leave a comment, leave a question wherever you are enjoying this. We appreciate it. Here's the plan for today. We're going to talk about a recap of the week that was, a big week. Mets and Padres, those are, probably the 2 biggest names on the Dodgers schedule. We got both of them in 1 week. We'll do buying or selling. That's sort of a segment that we're going to bring back. We haven't done in a while, but I'm going to throw out some, crazy statements, crazy questions, and I'll ask you, Matt, are you buying or selling? Folks in the chat, as always, you'll be able to join in on that. We'll get to some injury updates, some big ones with Gratterall, with Gonsolin, Blake Trinan back, Canely, Duffy, etc. We'll get to that. And then, of course, we'll get to your questions. But, Matt, we got to start this show the way I like to start every single one of these shows, by reminding people of the team that we are watching and talking about. The Dodgers, as of right now, are 19 games up in the division. They are 8 games up on the Mets for the best record in the National League. They have won 43 of their last 60. And, Matt, I'm going to be honest, it doesn't get old talking about that. It doesn't get old. I'm almost frustrated that we haven't gotten to a point where I get to say 20 yet. But next week, are we going to be saying 20? Is that number going to start with a 2 when we're talking here a week from today?
I think so. I mean, it's hard. I know you and I have talked about it in the past, and we try to kind of remind people of, hey, appreciate what this team is doing kind of in the present. Once October gets here and World Series and aspirations and all that, we can worry about that then. They had a remarkable year last season. And I think one reason it's viewed, kind of negatively is obviously because the Giants ended up winning the NL West and the Dodgers, were eliminated in the playoffs by the Braves. But they set a franchise record with 106 wins. And right now they're on pace to easily break that. But, I think after tonight, they might be on pace to win 112 now. So, yeah, I mean, it definitely doesn't get old. Like I've said in the past, I'm somebody who, when it comes to things I'm competitive in or want to win in, like winning never gets old to me. I would win, 10 times I'd win 11 times out of 10 possibilities if that was acceptable. Yeah. So, it's definitely fun to watch.
I like the people in the comments wondering if you were grabbing burgers from Del Taco, but we know you were disappointed. He wouldn't be going to Del Taco because he was disappointed by the burgers at Del Taco.
What I guess I can end some speculation and say that earlier my wife did bring home Tommy's, so I did eat that. That's not the reason for our delay, though. I genuinely was waiting on.
If you tell me you don't like Tommy's, by the way, Matt, like we're ending the show right here. You've had some bad food takes, but if you're going to say anything negative about Tommy's, that would be a deal breaker, I think, in our friendship.
I love Tommy's, but genuine, like I ate that like while the game was still going on, so that wasn't the reason we were late. Like I said in the comments, I was actually getting post game videos up, and you guys can go check. They're published now, but anyway.
There we go. Well, we've got some Matt and Jeff debates on things not specifically related to actual on the field, so stay tuned for that as we go. But let's get to a sort of a recap, Matt, of the week that was. Again, they had that weird Monday game against the Marlins. They beat the Marlins in 10 innings. And let me just go through the games that we saw, including the Mets and the Padres. Those are the headliners. And then we can break this down because I think there is some questions that I want to ask you about this. So Monday, the week starts. They beat the Marlins in 10 innings. Michael Grove started that one as Tony Gonsolin ends up getting scratched. We posted our Dodgers Daily, and within 30 minutes, that one was obsolete. The Dodgers bullpen, the key there, 5 1/3 innings, 2 hits, no earned runs. Craig Kimbrell, a part of that, part of this resurgent Craig Kimbrell, potentially. Let it go, Craig, is there. Chris Martin ends up closing it out, though, when he comes back for a second. So they beat the Mets on Tuesday. Andrew Heaney mixed results, but Gavin Lux notches 3 RBIs. Wednesday, they lose to Jacob deGrom as he dominates. Thursday, they lose as the bullpen struggles. Friday, they lose to the Padres, as Dustin May struggles. So a 3-game losing streak. I mentioned they've won 43 out of 60. They mixed a 3-game losing streak right into the middle of that one. Saturday and Sunday, though, they bounced back. 12-1 win behind a Urias gem on Saturday. Today, a 9-4 win against the Padres. So let's hone in. It's surprise to those folks. Apologies to folks expecting us to break down the Marlins series. We will be skipping over that Marlins series and moving on to the Mets and Padres. But the Mets results, I think, are what a lot of people want to talk about, Matt. They lose 2 out of 3 in New York. They see deGrom. He dominates them. They didn't even see Scherzer, who is another guy that if this were to become sort of a potential playoff matchup, that's another guy that's going to get mixed in. So let me ask you this. Do you make anything at all of a 3-game set against the Mets and the Dodgers losing 2 of 3?
Not too much. I mean, I think had the Dodgers, maybe been swept and every game was lopsided, I think you could say there's reason for concern. But, you look at the series and the one game that they won, like I mentioned in our watch party the other night, was the one where they had a short bullpen and Jake Reed and Heath Hembree needed to pitch, big innings, and Jake Reed got his first career save. And, that's not it's that you can't take anything from it. And I felt that way, like I said, last week when we did the show going into it. Like I was looking forward to that series just because I thought it would be entertaining and fun between, 2 of the top NL teams. And I really wasn't going to take too much away one way or the other, however it ended up going. With deGrom, Dave Roberts did say that his pitch usage, he relied on off-speed pitches more than the Dodgers sort of anticipated. And so he gave them a different look than maybe what they had prepared for. And that's not necessarily an excuse because that obviously could happen. And you can't say in the playoffs, well, the pitcher wasn't throwing us fastballs and that's why we lost, because, you could end up going home if that's the case. Yeah. But, that's something now that they'll kind of have maybe more video of and have in the back of their mind. And then even the last game, they had a lead. There was some misplays by Gavin Lux that sort of changed the outcome of that. And, I don't think there's any real cause for concern with that.
Yeah, look, I want to defend my guy, Jake Reed, fellow University of Oregon alumni. All right. But as somebody said in the comments, the fact that Jake Reed was closing out the first game and then pitching high leverage in the second game, I think tells you everything you need to know about how the Dodgers were approaching this series against the Mets. Now, were the Dodgers hiding some of their bullpen arms so that the Mets didn't get looks at sort of the top-end arms? I don't know. I mean, that's a hard thing to do in the regular season. If they were, they did a pretty effective job because it was a lot of Jake Reed and Heath Hembree, it felt like, in that 3-game set. But I think the deGrom piece is concerning because that's a guy that if you play the Mets, you are definitely going to see, and he dominated them. And there wasn't anything that I saw that was like, they'll be fine next time. It definitely was a little bit rough out there. But other than that, I mean, they got to Walker. Bassett didn't scare me all that much. Obviously, they didn't see Scherzer, who, as people have noted, has left one of his recent games with I don't know, a side injury or something like that.
Yeah, I think they called it like left side tightness or something like that. Okay. Or fatigue.
And look, I'm going to save my Scherzer injury rant and pitching availability or postseason availability for another day. But I guess that's what I would say. I'm not a black or white guy in every situation. I think there could be nuance. I think the deGrom piece is concerning because he clearly dominated them, and that's a guy that you're going to have to face at some point if you want to make the World Series. It sure seems like. On the flip side, the Dodgers weren't taking this seriously from a pitching perspective. Managerially, they were not taking it seriously. Obviously, their best hitters were out there a lot of the time. Obviously, their starting pitchers were who they were. But from a bullpen perspective, that was the one sort of thing they could manipulate. And they didn't do a great job of it. Now, Thursday, the bullpen was what struggled, but it was Chris Martin and Caleb Ferguson, two guys who are going to be on the postseason. So I think it's a mixed bag. I never overreact to a small sample size, but I do think there are some things you can glean with that. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, definitely. And I think even, with DeGrom's start, it took Brandon Nimmo made a fantastic play to rob Justin Turner of a home run. If that doesn't happen, I mean, that's not a routine play for anybody. So, who knows if that breaks a different way than how that game ends up going. And I think I saw somebody say something about DeGrom's starts in the series. I can't find the comment now. Sorry if you're listening to this on the podcast. We're trying to read and talk at the same time. I don't think it's unreasonable to sort of not expect, but believe that it's possible for the Dodgers to split Jacob deGrom's 2 starts in a 7-game series. That would come on regular rest potentially, and then if he's on short rest, at that point, who knows how the series has gone, and it could be a toss-up. Scherzer, I know we're not going to dive. I'm not trying to derail from your question about Thursday, but the Dodgers have seen him in the postseason, and they've beat him in the playoffs, and so I don't think yes, he's a very good pitcher, but I don't think he's somebody who would absolutely shut them down. Kind of, Dodgers would have no shot.
Yeah. I look at the Dodgers lineup. There's not a single pitcher in all of baseball that when they're on the mound, I say, Al, you know what? This is a loss. Just chalk it up. The Dodgers have top to bottom when they put their best 9-man lineup out there, which they have done very rarely for what it's worth, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But when they do, it's scary for anybody. And as you said, they almost got 2 runs off of DeGrom, which would have been enough in most situations. Obviously, the Mets have a great bullpen as well. Ottavino and Diaz in that game were unhittable. And so, look, it's a 3-game series against the Mets. If the Dodgers face them in the postseason, I'm not going to be worried. The Dodgers will be favored. The Dodgers will probably be favored in, if it's a 7-game series, 5 or 6 of the 7. I bet when DeGrom pitches, they'll be underdogs. But other than that, they're going to be favored in all the rest of those games. They will be expected to beat them. The Mets do not match up well against lefties, which the Dodgers have plenty of, both in the starting rotation and in their bullpen. And the Dodgers have a better bullpen, even though the Mets are good. I mean, the Dodgers are better than them in every aspect. They score more runs per game. They allow less runs per game. They have a better bullpen. On and on and on it goes. And so Dodgers-Mets, 3-game set. They took 1 out of 3. Small sample size on the road. Don't worry too much about it. The back half of the week was our good friends down the road in San Diego, the Padres. They started this series with a loss, at which point, Matt, the Dodgers had lost 3 in a row. You and I are on Dodgers Twitter. There were the yeah but crowd. They were having a field day with 3 in a row, 2 losses to the Mets, 1 loss to the Padres. Here it comes. Here comes the collapse, just like in 2017 or whatever year it was that the Dodgers collapsed and then went to the World Series. But beside the point, they collapsed in the regular season. And then the Dodgers rattle off 21 runs in the next 2 games. They allow 5. They stomp out the Padres, who are a team currently the 5th best record in the National League, I believe. So what did you make of, I guess I'll say this. I was impressed by the Dodgers' ability to lose 3 in a row and then bounce back the way that they did. This team does not seem overwhelmed. They do not seem to get too high or too low. They come back. They absolutely smack the Padres around on Saturday and Sunday. And I'm going to be honest, as we sit here Sunday night, I'm feeling good about things.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first game back from the road trip historically tends to be sort of a trap game. And then I think you factor
East Coast
in
to West Coast, 7 p.m. game on West Coast time. It was, we said on the Dodgers Daily Show, I said, bet all the Yu Darvish props you possibly can because the Dodgers offense is going to be asleep, which unfortunately was accurate.
Yeah. So, the fact that ended up being a loss shouldn't have been at least surprising to anyone really. And, I agree with you. They were able to bounce back. Obviously Saturday was a huge win, and Sunday ended up being, relatively comfortable after some little bit of a comeback by the Padres. And that, Evan Phillips was 1 out away from getting out of the inning. And I think most people would take him in that scenario, considering what we've seen. I mean, he took the mound having retired 29 batters in a row. Yeah. There was that weird play on the foul ball that Will Smith did say tonight in a post-game video that I uploaded while I was not at the gym, like some people have alleged.
Or Del Taco.
He said it hit the screen, and that's kind of what threw him off. And so that ended up, leading to a couple runs. But Yeah, I mean it was. I guess you can't necessarily say it was a successful week because they only went. I guess they went a little over 500. Yeah, if they went over 500, if we factor in the Marlins win.
Hey, the Marlins
Monday.
are a Major League Baseball team, Matt. It does count.
That's true. But it was a fine week, all things considered. And at the end of the day, like we said at the beginning of the show, their magic number to clinch the NL West is down to 9, and so this should be, that aspect of it should be wrapped up within 10 days to 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, a 4-3 week. Look, if you just play that out over a 162 game season, that's a really solid season. If you factor in that 4 of those games were played on the East Coast on the road at bizarre times, by the way. The Monday game was a weird time. The Wednesday game was a weird time. Then they've got to fly all the way East Coast to West Coast to play a Padres team on Friday night. You factor all that in, 4-3, you take it. You don't complain. You beat the Padres 2 out of 3, right? Like, let me ask you this, Matt. Would you have rather beaten the Mets 2 out of 3 or the Padres 2 out of 3? Just for your personal enjoyment level.
The Padres, I think.
Yeah, I don't want to see the Padres beating us in Dodger Stadium. Like, it'd be fun to talk about the playoffs with the Mets, but I mean, I'd love to hear from people in the chat. Maybe you and I are the outliers here. I would take 2 out of 3 against the Padres every day. I'd take 2 out of 3 against the Giants. Heck, they could be terrible. I'd rather beat the Giants 2 out of 3 than either of these two teams.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of that too is, the interactions with the Mets. It's kind of like, well, what if about the playoffs, this and that. But whenever these Padres series come up, man, Dodger fans get really frustrated if things go bad, and Padres fans all of a sudden start tweeting us when we're not even mentioning the Padres, and we'll get just a bunch of responses and tweets from them, and it's like, what? Like, are you guys just searching tweets? Like, what's going on here? You don't follow our account. What's happening? And so, I agree with you there. It definitely would take 2 out of 3 from the Padres instead.
Yeah, we've got a mix of some Padres, some Mets. So I think three out of 4 is would say the Padres so far, from what I can see in the comments. So we've got some people posting questions in there. I appreciate it. We're going to get to those, I promise. But let's get to buying or selling. And this is a segment, Matt, where I'm going to throw out a question for you or a statement, and you tell me, are you buying, agreeing with, you're buying into it, or you're selling it? I want nothing to do. I disagree with this. And I just got accused, by the way, in the comments of being too positive, which, again, I would refer back to the beginning of the show, the 19-game up lead in the division, the 8-game lead in the league, 43 out of their last 60 as validation and justification for my positivity. But this is something you hinted at, and I'm just going to say it out loud. Are you buying or selling that this Dodgers team, right now that we are watching, being the best team the Dodgers have put together in the run of, however many years in a row they've made the playoffs, bunch of NL West championships, World Series appearances, etc. Is this the best team?
Yeah, this is tough. And it's something I've gone back and forth with myself, past week or so, just thinking about not even knowing that this was going to come up. Honestly, I don't know, because you look at the lineup and it is, right? Like, it's the most complete lineup. It's the deepest lineup they've ever had. But that 2017 pitching staff was very, very good. I mean, I don't, maybe it's just revisionist history. I don't really remember there being any clear holes in it. I mean, Kenta Maeda was moved to the bullpen for the playoffs. Kenley Jansen was still lights out. Brandon Morrow was lights out. So I think when you look at it from that standpoint, I might give 2017 the edge. And granted, some of that right now is factoring in, Walker Buehler obviously is done for the year this time around. But yeah, I think I might still have to lean 2017, but it's like 51-49.
Got it. Apologies to my dog, by the way, making herself a bed there in the back. We got to split up some kids with sickness today, so the dog's out here with me tonight. We're doing our best, but yeah, I mean, look, the season is not over. How this ends is totally valid. I just thought it was interesting watching the broadcast today and them talking about, hey, the pace that they are on. They've got like one of the top 5 run differentials of all time through this many games. They are not on pace to set the win percentage record. 2020 has the highest win percentage of all time, which is insane. They're winning 69% of their games right now. That team won almost 72% of their games in 2020. I talked about how the Dodgers have won 43 of their last 60. That's the win percentage that 2020 was on. They were literally 43-17 that year. They go on to win the World Series. So it's hard to argue with that one. to your point, there are teams that on paper, pitching staff, etc., seem to have been better, but did not come through and actually win. And so it's just interesting. It's an interesting conversation to me, just because of the win percentage on a full season, they are currently on pace, as I said, to win 68.9% of their games. That's the win-loss right now. It was a 111 game pace heading into this one, as you said. I don't know what one game does, if that moves it up to 112 or whatever. But, I mean, that would be the best win percentage. The second place would be 1953. After that, you're going back into the 1890s, according to Baseball Reference here. 2021 was 65.4%. So they're, a pretty good amount better than that team. As you said, you look at the lineup, and it's disgusting. I mean, you've got three guys who, when you look at the totality of their career with Mookie Betts, Trey Turner, and Freddie Freeman, you're probably going to talk about three of the best hitters to ever wear a Dodger uniform. Like, I'm not saying as Dodgers, because Freddie Freeman's peak was not as a Dodger. Who knows what Trey Turner's career goes from here, geographically or statistically. But these are three guys that are like on pace, I would say, to be Hall of Famers, or at least in that conversation. They are all in their prime at the top of the lineup. You've got Will Smith. We all know how I feel. Like, is that another guy who's about to go on a Mike Piazza type run and career? He's got better numbers than Piazza. Piazza became a Hall of Famer. And you just go down the list. Max Muncy, Justin Turner, those guys won't be Hall of Famers because of when they peaked. But they're, again, some of the guys that you will remember forever as Dodgers. Bellinger, complicated. We don't need to get into that. But you see the point that I'm making, Gavin Lux, former top prospect. The offense, it's hard to argue that this is the best lineup that the Dodgers have ever put together. From a pitching perspective, I think it's totally fair, because Tyler Anderson isn't going to be one of the best pitchers you ever think about as wearing a Dodger. Andrew Heaney is not. And yet, you look at the statistics of Gonsolin and the rest of these guys, the statistics match up with the best seasons that some of these Dodger pitchers have ever had. And I'm not getting into the compare against era, etc. I'm talking about Tony Gonsolin leads the National League in ERA. Like, how many Dodgers can say that other than Clayton Kershaw, who did it for 100 years in a row? You've still got Clayton Kershaw pitching fantastically. Urias has a 2.1 ERA. Tyler Anderson's in the twos in ERA. Dustin May, most people think, I shouldn't say most, there's a number of people think he's better than all of those guys. Then you get to the bullpen. It's one of the best bullpens in baseball. It's not perfect. It's not the best bullpen they've had in the last 5 to 10 years by any stretch of the imagination. But we're going to get some injury updates if Trinan figures his stuff out. Craig Kimbrell, look, cautious optimism, has had a few good appearances in a row ever since Let It Go became. Evan Phillips struggled today, was on an unbelievable run. Alex Vesia was dominant today. Chris Martin has been very good. So you just go down the list, and I guess I'm putting all of this together and saying, yes, how they perform in the postseason, how they finish the season, all of that matters. But on paper, which is all we can talk about right now because the season is not over, on paper, it has the foundation, the makings of, if this team goes on to win 110 games, make a World Series, win. If this team wins 110 games and wins a World Series, Matt, I don't know how you could argue that this isn't the best team in franchise history.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, obviously, we're having this conversation, a little, and not prematurely, but it's tough to say, give a full referendum on this year's team and how it may compare to 2017 or 2020 and all that. But I do agree with you. If I'm assuming they're going to finish with the franchise record in wins, just because, if they go below 500, they'll get there. So you can pretty much check that off. And if they do end up winning World Series, then I agree with you. At that point, it will be tough to say that it's not the best team that they have ever had. And then I think that in turn could lead to, another interesting discussion as to, are they a dynasty?
Yeah.
I think 2 titles in 3 years does sort of qualify you. And then if you then extrapolate that over how many times they've also reached the World Series, that could become an interesting conversation as well.
Yeah, 4 World Series appearances in 6 years, I think, would be the statistic. That'd be an impressive run. Again, we're not saying anything. As you pointed out, if the Dodgers go 15-15 across their last 30, they will tie the franchise record for wins, to put this in perspective. So anything over 500, which they've got a bunch of games against a team they love to beat, which is the Padres, and they will set the franchise record for wins. So again, I'm not saying they are already the best. I'm just saying, at this point, we would know whether or not this team will be in the conversation, right? We could look at it and say, you know what, this team is good, but the lineup was not as good, or the pitching, whatever. This team checks every single box that they could have checked up until this point. The win percentage, on paper, the offense, the pitching performances, etc. So we'll see what happens. Okay, so we're both buying that this team is at least on a trajectory towards becoming the best team in franchise history.
Yes.
Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Second buying or selling here for you. Buying or selling the Max Muncy resurgence that isn't happening anymore. 5 for his last 39 coming into tonight. This after a stretch where we were all anointing him, and I say we all, meaning me and you. I'm not blaming anybody else. Me, you, Daniel, we were all on board the Muncy train. 5 for 39 coming into tonight. Did play all right tonight. He had the ball that he pimped as a home run and then went off the fence, and then he was standing at first base at the end of it, but he hit the ball hard. So where are you at on Muncy? You buying or selling Max Muncy of today?
I'm still buying it. I think this is just a little skid that he's in. I think by the end of the regular season, he would have kind of turned it back around and gotten, on an upswing. Maybe not quite at the hot pace that he was at when he sort of, changed his batting stance and doing the little shuffle step back as the pitch was coming. But yeah, I mean, I think like you just threw up that comment. I'll still buy it.
Yeah. It's a tricky one. I mean, because it's such small sample sizes we're dealing with. Like, he goes through a 5 for 39 slump, as I said, coming into Sunday's game. I mean, that's just about as long as the hot streak that I was anointing him as back for. And so it's hard to say. I mean, we knew he was going to come back to earth. Like, as one person on Twitter said, that wasn't just like Muncy being great. That was like Muncy at his best, at his best, at his best. And so it wasn't a sustainable sense. And so I would say the results are somewhere in the middle. And if the results are somewhere in between the 5 for 39 and the absolute torrid stretch that he was on before that, then there's probably, if he's in the middle, we're fine, right? Like anything better than what we were getting 3 months ago, we'll take with Muncy. And so I think I agree with you that I'm still buying Max Muncy as a solid contributor to this team moving forward. Like, not maybe all-star peak Max Muncy level, but not like 80 weighted runs created plus Max Muncy either. All right. Next one up here on the buying or selling. We're going sort of, this is going to be the bulk of it because it's going to cover every topic that I wanted to hit tonight. Let's talk Dustin May. Are you buying any concern with Dustin May on this basis? He had 2 unbelievable starts to resume his career this season. Both of those were against the Marlins. Then he comes back and he faces the Padres, 5 innings, 4 hits, 5 walks, 5 strikeouts, 6 earned runs against the Padres. So the question I want to ask is, are you buying skepticism of Dustin May based on who he has pitched against this season? If somebody said, Matt, I am not sold on Dustin May because he beat up on the Marlins and he struggled against the Padres, are you buying or selling that argument?
No, I'm still selling it. And, again, I'll plug our watch party because this was something we talked about. It obviously was during a Dustin May start, so the conversation naturally came up. For me, in his starts against the Marlins, his command was good. Everything, his velocity was good. And frankly, like I said last week during our watch parties, I was surprised that he came out so strong because the start he had against the Padres was what I expected in his first outing back, because yes, he had been through the rehab assignment, but still getting back into a major league game is completely different than pitching for AAA. And so I think had his command been really wild, had he still walked a bunch of batters against the Marlins and then had that start that he did against the Padres, I would absolutely buy concern. But with the Padres, I think it was just a matter of, it was more rust than anything. He wasn't really locating very well. And the Padres are a better team than the Marlins. So when he did make a mistake pitch, they took advantage of it. And that's what any good team will sort of do. And so I don't think that Dustin May is always going to make mistake pitches, but I'm not saying he's going to be perfect either, but we kind of saw what he was developing into last year. And so, I'm not at the point of being concerned. Frankly, he could have another, struggling start, and I still wouldn't really be on board. I mean, I guess depending on how it goes, I still wouldn't necessarily be fully concerned, but he has a full month to sort of get everything ironed out.
Yeah. His next start, it will be against the Padres on Friday night, according to sort of ESPN, sort of mapping things out there. So that'll be an interesting one. Another opportunity against the Padres. late in this week. But yeah, I'm with you. One of the comments we put up, this is basically his spring training. I think that's a fair assessment, both in the quality of roster that he saw against the Marlins, being a spring training roster, I think, and just in the fact that you can't expect the guy to come back and be perfectly consistent every single time. There's a reason spring training exists. There's a reason that even the best players pitch in spring training because they need reps. Yes, Dustin May had rehab assignments. I think that does need to be taken into account. But if it's 2 good starts, 1 bad start, and the bad start wasn't that necessarily even he was just getting crushed everywhere. It was that he just couldn't find the strike zone in a lot of cases. I mentioned the walks in that one, 5 walks. That he had 2 hit by pitch. I think 2 hit by pitches in addition to that. So he allows 11 base runners in 5 innings, 6 earned runs. It was a mess for him. But so I'm with you. I'm not concerned about that. I just think that's a narrative that could exist, and so I think it's worth talking about. It seems like people agree with us. People aren't jumping off the Dustin May bandwagon quite yet. Somebody asked in the chat what his sort of career numbers are. 22 starts in his career, plus 12 relief appearances. He's got a 3.12 ERA, a 1.07 WHIP to go with it. And so obviously this is a guy who is a former top prospect. You look at even the slightly bigger sample size, which is his career, and I think you could see why there is reason for optimism. Or you could just look at his 100-mile-an-hour sinker that looks like a freaking bowling ball and a slider that does the exact opposite thing, like 20 miles an hour less. And that would be another good reason, I think, for optimism as well. So seeing the Padres a second time in a week, I think will be a great test for him to see kind of where he's at. Can he dial in the control and start throwing some more strikes in that one? All right, this is a fun one. Are you buying or selling David Price's trip to the injured list as a real injury, Matt? Here's my argument for why I am selling this as a real argument. If you missed this, he was added to the injured list today with wrist inflammation. David Price was quick to say, I'm expected back before the end of the season. He hasn't pitched since Monday, so they were able to backdate this one a few days. Now, here's the reason that I think is the most compelling argument for why this is not a real injury. Ryan Pepiot was brought back to pitch today. The Dodgers announced yesterday that Pepiot would be coming back, that he would pitch today in order to sort of stretch out the rotation to go back to a 6-man rotation. Now, the reason that Price had to go on the injured list is because Pepiot had not been down long enough to be recalled, except in one instance, which is somebody goes to the injured list. So Eric Steven of True Blue LA, he had a great tweet yesterday where he's like, all right, well, if this is a fake injured list thing, you're going to want to find somebody who hasn't pitched in a few days. And so he listed off the guys. It was like Vesia, Phillips, and Price. He said, if one of these 3 guys gets sent down, then they can backdate it a few days, et cetera, et cetera. Well, they weren't going to do it to Phillips. They weren't going to do it to Vesia. Lo and behold, the veteran David Price, who has pitched incredibly well, all of a sudden, he ends up on the injured list. He's only going to miss like 10 or 11 days with wrist inflammation and then be back. So I am selling the crap out of this being a real injury. I am not plugged in at all. I have no sources on this, Matt. You are more plugged in than I am, not to say that you have immediate access to the real medical records here. But are you buying or selling this as a real injury?
Yeah, I'm going to buy it, at least for now, just because I agree with you. I think MLB teams in general have exaggerated injuries, if that's how you want to put it, and have found reasons to put players on the injured list. I remember a few years ago with maybe a handful of years ago now, because time is flying, with Ross Stripling. I'm pretty sure it was his rookie season in like either August or September. I think he went on the IL because of like lower body fatigue or something was what it was called. With Price, he hadn't pitched, and so it passes that check critique, I guess, if you want to look, if that's what you want to call it, from the standpoint of, were they really planning it? And I'm not putting it past the Dodgers are
right.
Fantastic
I should have added that. That this would be very on brand of the Dodgers to make something up to game the system.
Yeah, I mean, they absolutely would plan, a week ahead, something like this. So I'm not going to fully put that past them, but I think if Price makes a very quick return on, the first day he's eligible or the second day he's eligible, then I will have definitely more skepticism. But if this, for whatever reason, drags on, then I think, it is valid. And I think we do have to remember he did have left wrist surgery in 2019 to remove a cyst. And so there's some, at least, history there. I don't know if, having surgery makes him maybe more prone to inflammation in the wrist. Dave Roberts also said that he really hasn't been healthy all season, which I kind of found interesting. But again, is that just, trying to put more cover on it?
Yeah.
But yeah, for now, I'm buying it as a real injury.
Okay. So you look at his results real quick. He did throw a third of an inning on Monday against the Marlins. He gets one out, allows one hit, allows one walk. Before that, he pitched on the Friday game of that series as well. 1 inning pitched, 1 hit, 1 earned run. That was a home run that he allowed in that one, and he had not pitched until that was his first appearance since Tuesday, the August 23rd. So going back to the August 23rd, he had only appeared twice before this injured list stint. Now, again, is this just a veteran guy that sort of he's at the end of his career. He's already gotten paid. He's not too concerned about injured list stints, sort of mucking up a future free agency, that kind of a thing. Who knows? But I'm with you. If he's back on the minimum number of days and all of a sudden telling us how great he feels in 5 or 6 days, then I'll continue to be skeptical there. All right, let's get a little...
Just really quick before, I will add the caveat that he did on Sunday when he was speaking with reporters, he did say that he is already healing and feeling better. He wasn't going to throw...
That's amazing.
He wasn't going to throw still for another handful of days, but he did say his wrist was already feeling better.
Yeah, he's like, wait, so Dave, just to be clear, I just get a week off? We just get to go on vacation here? I'm not throwing for a few days? He's like, this sounds great. I'm still getting paid how much money? All right. Let's move on. I got 3 more here. The third one being a fun one. I think fun. We'll see if it's actually fun for you. But here, let's take a left turn here and get a little spicy on this buying or selling. All right, Matt. Are you buying or selling Joey Gallo making the playoff roster?
I'm buying that. I saw you tweeted earlier we'd be discussing it, and it surprised me from the standpoint of just that I don't think the Dodgers would make that trade and leave him off.
Okay.
I've come to talk myself into, I think Hanser Alberto is more likely to be left off the postseason roster than maybe I thought initially. I know a lot of fans are clamoring for Miguel Vargas to be included.
He's our next buying and selling, so hold tight on that one.
Okay, so I'll pause that one. But with Joey Gallo specifically, I am buying it. I'm buying it with the caveat of it. I wouldn't necessarily expect him to receive a ton of playing time.
Okay, so here's my question on Gallo. First of all, I will push back against the idea that just because they traded for him, they're definitely going to give him a postseason spot. I think they traded for him. They figured he's a lottery ticket, figure we can unlock something and improve upon where he was with the Yankees. Then he'll be a contributor, etc. Move on down the line. If we're being honest, we haven't seen that. He was 1 for his last 19 coming into today's game. And it's looked like 1 for 19. He goes 1 for 3 today, has the single down the right field line for his 1 hit. So 2 for his last 22 as we sit here and record this. And it's been ugly. I mean, he's a left-handed hitter. We'll get into his numbers against lefty. He has a .413 OPS against left-handed pitchers this year. So I think that's part of it. He's a 2-time Gold Glove winner. I'll be honest. When I see somebody's a Gold Glove winner, I kind of give them the benefit of the doubt. We've joked on this show. Joey Gallo has lost the benefit of the doubt defensively. For me, if that guy has to turn around and find a ball over his head, I have no confidence. It might as well be Gavin Lux out there in left field. That's the level. Now, maybe charging a ball, maybe reading a ball. He's got some athleticism, buying all that. I just wonder, what does he bring to the... Here's my question with Gallo. What does he bring to the table that the Dodgers will not already have on the roster? Because here's the thing. Cody Bellinger is a lock for the postseason roster. He is the best defense. People saying that the Dodgers have anybody that is as good as him defensively, like you're lying to yourself because you don't like Bellinger. He's fantastic defensively. You can throw out some number at me, defensive statistics and metrics. Anybody will tell you they're all flawed, okay? He's fantastic defensively. He's made some unbelievable plays. He's going to make the roster because he's had big hits and because at the very least he could become a defensive substitution at one of the most important positions, okay? Chris Taylor is a lock to make the postseason roster because of his versatility. He's pretty much the only guy, other than Hanser Alberto, that you trust at second base, at shortstop. He provides you some cover at third, although you probably don't need that, while also being able to play left, play right, play center. He has history in hitting in the postseason. So I would say Chris Taylor is a lock. Trace Thompson, the way he's hitting, is an absolute lock. He has to be a lock. We're going to talk more about him in just a moment. So I list all of that out. You only get 13 hitters, okay? So you've got the 9 that are your starters. Let's assume Thompson, Bellinger are the 2 outfielders. You've got Justin Turner, Max Muncy at third and DH. So that's 9. So you've got Barnes at 10. He's a lock. I just said Chris Taylor's a lock at 11. So now we're at 11, and we've only got 2 more spots left on the bench. Is it Miguel Vargas? Is it... Jeez Louise. Got like fireworks or something going off in my neighborhood. Can you hear that?
I did hear one loud bang.
the power goes out. Hopefully we'll find out it was a transformer. Jeez Louise. But we might have to edit this one out when we post the podcast. I don't know. But you just start losing spaces. If Hanser Alberto is on that list, then all of a sudden we're at 12. Then it comes down to Joey Gallo versus a guy like Miguel Vargas, who we're going to talk about in just a moment. I just think the numbers start to crunch down a little bit when you get to Gallo.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. I think, though, from the Dodgers, I know you're skeptical of his defensive ability. I think I'm somewhere in between the middle of you and the Dodgers. I think the Dodgers view him as a very good defensive outfielder. I think he is most comfortable in left field, at least from what I've kind of seen so far. His misplays have come in right field. And I think that they'll, potentially take the chance on, him maybe running into a couple home runs in the playoffs type thing. And short of, and I don't want to jump ahead, I know we're going to get there, short of like Miguel Vargas putting together a really strong showing this month, I just don't necessarily see him making the roster.
Yeah, again, and I guess let me summarize my Gallo thing real quick there with just, I don't know, like, if Cody Bellinger's on the roster, what is Joey Gallo bringing? Because you have to remember, like, if you've got 9 guys who are in your starting lineup, the Dodgers, even Andrew Friedman said it on the broadcast, like, there isn't a ton of platoon going on in that one because of, like, the guys that they have are already so good, and there aren't a ton of platoon split guys. And so, like, if Joey Gallo's not starting, at what point does he come into a game? Like, and who is he pinch hitting for at that point? Because if they bring in a righty, who is he pinch hitting for? Not Mookie, not anybody in the infield, not your DH, not your catcher. Like, it's not pinch hitting for Trace Thompson. Is he pinch hitting for Bellinger? He's the same, equally as good as Bellinger. So at what point is he actually playing where, again, we're going to talk Vargas here in just a second, and I'll just lead straight into it. At least Vargas in that last spot gives you something slightly different. Even a guy like Edwin Rios gives you something slightly different just from a positional perspective. I don't think Edwin Rios makes it because I think he's in the Gallo camp. But with Gallo struggling as bad as he is, it's what's the differentiator? What does he bring to the table the Dodgers won't already have? And yes, I agree with you. Hey, you like the thump off the bench, but he has to get off the bench. Whose spot is he taking on the field? I just don't see it. I think you roll with Trace Thompson. So here's my last buying, or my second to last buying or selling for you. Are you buying or selling the possibility of Miguel Vargas starting playoff games for the Dodgers against left-handed pitchers? Here's why I ask. Trace Thompson, my guy, I bought back in after my All-Star break, sold my stock at the All-Star break, bought in again right afterwards. He's got a 539 OPS against lefties. That's in 66 at-bats. Joey Gallo, 413 OPS in 63 at-bats. Yes, I said OPS 413. Cody Bellinger, 579 OPS. That's in 131 at-bats. I was surprised by this. Chris Taylor, if you had to guess, Chris Taylor's OPS against left-handed pitchers this year, what would you guess?
Oh, man. I mean,
it's better than you expect. I'll give you a hint.
Okay. I was going to guess probably in the 600 neighborhood.
714 OPS. So Chris Taylor, like, look, I don't want him to be my guy out there. It's been 600 from July, August, and September so far, but Chris Taylor's the only guy who's had any sort of effectiveness, and 714 is, probably right around league average. And so I'm looking at that. Miguel Vargas, it's AAA. I'm not comparing apples to apples here. His OPS against left-handed pitchers at AAA in 94 at-bats, 1082. Over 1,000, almost 1,100 OPS. And so I don't know if he could play left field defensively. I value defense. I think that matters. My point is, Trace has struggled against lefties. Gallo is terrible against lefties. Bellinger is not good against lefties. Taylor is okay against lefties, but has struggled to hit the ball. I just wonder if, along this last stretch of games here, if Miguel Vargas can carve out a role. So I'll ask the question again. Buying or selling Miguel Vargas starting games in left field for the Dodgers against left-handed pitchers?
I'm selling it. I think, with a strong close to the regular season, I think he can play himself into that possibility. I think if that was going to happen, he kind of needed to get off to a better start than what he has. He had, the one good MLB debut with a couple hits. Since then, his opportunities, admittedly, they definitely haven't been, there haven't been a bunch of them. He's only made a couple starts. I think he also pinch hit at one point, but he's gone hitless since his debut.
Yeah.
And so I just feel like if he was going to potentially open the door or really get the front office and Dave Roberts, the coaching staff, thinking, I think he would have had to have come out, swinging a hot bat. Now, all that being said, with Gavin Lux, not playing for at least another probably 2 games or so. If that leads to opportunities for Miguel Vargas and he starts to generate some momentum, then perhaps. But I don't see that happening at this point.
Yeah, this is a speculative buy. I wouldn't say this is quite a penny stock, but we're in penny stock territory. We're buying a low stock here, but I just think it's something to monitor because I think Chris Taylor is trending in a direction that is not encouraging, even if his numbers have been good. I think Gallo is trending in a direction that's not encouraging. I think Cody Bellinger is not trending anywhere. He's flatlining exactly where he has been for the last 2.5 years. Now, Trace is the wild card here because Trace historically has hit lefties. He's destroying righties, as we saw again tonight. But he has OPS against lefties this year is well below his career average. He has typically hit lefties better than righties. It's reversed this year. And so I just hope they give him some opportunities to prove that number wrong. Because if Trace Thompson can throw up a 700 OPS against lefties, he's my everyday left fielder, I don't think twice. If not, and you said, a month from now, if Miguel Vargas can actually hit a little bit, maybe he hits 260, 270 from here on out, which is kind of what people are expecting from him as a prospect, then all of a sudden I'm saying, how bad is he in left field? Are we talking Gavin Lux level defensively out there in left field? Or are we talking, somewhere Joey Gallo level of defense out there in left field? Because if it's Gallo and there's a bat, I think it's interesting. I also think he has bat-to-ball skills, which probably play up in the postseason, even if the stakes are magnified. And that doesn't feel like a guy who's going to be afraid of the moment. So we'll move on, but I just want to plant that seed in people's minds because I think it's something interesting to watch. If he starts to hit a little bit, you heard it here first. All right, last one. This is a fun one because you and I went back and forth on this a little bit on Twitter. We went back and forth about a lot of things, but this was the first thing. The Dodgers, day game today. It was like 106 degrees. Our guy Blake was there covering it. He screenshotted his weather app. It was over 100 degrees. And I said, and I didn't know if this was a controversial opinion. Based on the Twitter responses, it was not a controversial opinion. I'm selling the crap out of day games. I don't like day games. In LA, it's always warm. It's warm to hot. Give me a 7-10 game, 72 degrees, sweatshirt in the 7th inning. The perfect setting. I want night games every single time. I avoided day games when I lived in Los Angeles. I'm selling day games. You're buying them. Give me the sales pitch for why I should be buying day games.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this may be tough because I'm definitely looking at it from the standpoint of like work schedule perspective.
Okay.
So going to like Dodger Stadium for a 1:10 game, I'm typically there like at 9:30 or 10, and so it's quiet. Like they're getting the outfield ready. Like it's just nice to kind of be there as the stadium is kind of, I guess waking up, if you will. And 1:10 games are just sort of, they tend to be kind of exciting and have, a little bit of action. Admittedly, this is coming from, like I said, a work perspective. From a fan's perspective, yes, if, a day like today, if they had played at 1:10, that would have been miserable for everybody.
Yeah.
So I guess I think from a fan kind of viewing perspective, I think a like 5:40 or 6:10 start is most ideal.
Yeah, I agree with you. And even today was a 4:08 start. So, that's right in the middle. I don't mind. I wouldn't avoid a 4:10 start if that was on the schedule. It's just the 1:10, 12:10, those types of games. In LA, it's just too warm for me. Like I don't want to be sitting in the sun baking. And on the flip side, it's perfect temperature most of the year at 7:10. It's just like 72 degrees. When I went a month ago, it was like T-shirt and shorts weather, bring a sweatshirt and you're good to go. And so I'm selling day games. You're buying day games. You called them elite, I believe, was your exact quote on Twitter.
I did. And I'll stand by that from, like I said, very specific kind of work perspective for what, we do. I that's my preference. But as a fan, if you're going, I can understand. I think 5:40, 6:10-ish neighborhood is good. I mean, remember several years ago when they would have 7:40 starts at Dodger Stadium.
Yeah,
those were rough.
Crazy. I'm with Dave. He says, I don't get it why some announcers like to say it's beautiful 87 degrees here in sunny Los Angeles. Dude, I'm melting. I agree with that sentiment. Also, shout out to Harlem Emery, who apparently hates everything about the Dodgers in Los Angeles, and yet has been helping us monetize the crap out of this site by giving us a view for about an hour. So shout out to Harlan. Keep watching, baby. As Eric said, keep watching. We appreciate you. Okay, let's move on from buying or selling here. Let's do some quick injury updates, and then we'll close out with some questions from folks. Lots of injury updates to get to. You mentioned Gavin Lux. So what's the latest on Gavin Lux? Not on the injured list, which seems like it's good news.
Yeah, so his when they got back from the road trip, his neck issue started acting up again, and he ended up receiving a cortisone shot. So whenever you get that kind of injection, you players typically don't play for at least 1 or 2 games. It seemed like they're going to give him upwards of maybe 4 or 5 games off before maybe bringing him back into the lineup or potentially appearing off the bench. Dave Roberts did say that it is, like you just alluded to, it's not, they're not considering a stint on the IL at this point. And he said, he was then asked, like, do you guys regret maybe not putting Lux on the IL late last month when the neck trouble kind of first started? And he said no, because, at the time we thought just giving him the rest and the days off was going to sort of alleviate it. And it did, because he was playing. And he said, it just kind of came back and it was a little unexpected. And there's nothing you can sort of do about it now. Like there's, it's obviously revisionist history to say, yeah, maybe we should have put him on the IL, but fortunately it still seems to be a minor thing.
Yeah. Okay, good news there. Some other positive ones. Obviously, Treinen is back, makes his first appearance. The velocity was better. There was some fear. He's throwing 94, 95 in his rehab start. It was up to 97, 98. I believe a 1-2-3 inning in his first appearance, so that seems to be going well. He said a miraculous recovery, by the way, from a torn front of his shoulder capsule.
Yeah, so I don't fully understand the extent of it other than what was initially told to him after, I guess, I'm assuming it was an MRI, was that, yes, he had the torn capsule in the front of his throwing shoulder and that he was going to need season-ending surgery. And he, I think like any player, isn't just going to say, well, yeah, put me under the knife, let's end my year. And so they kind of continued discussing different matters. And he said he, I think, sought out some advice from, I think, really close family friends and just other doctors that the Dodgers kind of referred him to that are specialized with this type of injury. Yeah. And they sort of discovered that, a rehab would potentially work. And that became all the more viable when he went to have the physical for his contract extension that he signed. And they found that there was already scar tissue that had developed. And so he said that allowed him to go the rehab route rather than having season-ending surgery. But so at least he seems okay for now. I mean, I think that is a little concerning because Treinen didn't specify, and I'm not familiar enough with this type of injury to know if, like, okay, you rehabbed it, but if you're pitching next week, like, could you tear it open again? I mean, obviously.
Right. How stable is scar tissue?
Right. So, yeah, I mean, I guess you just, kind of hope, like I said in the past when we've discussed him, that he can stay healthy for at least another 6 weeks, then you figure it out after that.
Laura asked a question in here, which I think is a good one. I was wondering the same thing. I've seen back and neck for Gavin Lux.
Yeah, so it started off as the neck, and then Dave Roberts said it was lower neck, upper back, but for the most part, it does seem to be primarily a neck issue.
So you're saying Dave Roberts confused everybody on an injury update, Matt? This would be the first time he's ever done that, if that was fair.
Yeah, a little bit. It's a rare instance there.
Okay, a couple on the negative side of things. Gratterall. This one doesn't sound good. Comes back a couple times, goes to the injured list. I think things are not, his season's not over, but it doesn't sound good. That's my perception. What's the reality with Gratterall?
Yeah, I think it's actually good news. He had the MRI, and it showed that it was just inflammation in his throwing elbow, and so that's encouraging. Obviously, if there had been any sort of ligament issue, then that would have ended his season and potentially, years after that. Or the year after that, excuse me, not multiple years. But yeah, he said he would potentially start throwing Sunday or Monday. I'm pretty sure it didn't start Sunday, so maybe we're looking at Monday where he'll start playing catch, and that'll be on flat ground to kind of see how his arm responds to that. If he's able to do it without any sort of discomfort, he'll then eventually work to getting back off a mound and potentially return. I mean, there's not really a set date for him. My guess is it's going to be at least another 7 to 10 days.
Okay, so yeah, makes 4 appearances, comes back on the 22nd, last appearance on the 28th, and then right back on the injured list. So that's worrisome. As you said, the MRI results, good news there, but we'll see. I had to post that message, by the way, the backbone's connected to the neck bone. That was a great comment, so shout out to that person. Tony Gonsolin. Positive MRI results, encouraging. Again, Dave Roberts hadn't seen them. We joked about this, I believe, on our live show. The manager apparently hadn't gotten there was a scan. Some people had seen it. The manager was not one of them, apparently. But what's the latest on Gonsolin? Because when we first came out, it was like, this could be headed down the Walker-Buehler path, or he could be back in 2 weeks. It sounds like we're closer to the latter of those two, based on the recent reports.
Yeah, definitely. So Tony Gonsolin, like you said, the MRI was encouraging enough. Don't still know like real specifics on it. He at least has started throwing again, so that's good. I'm not 100% sure if he's gotten off a mound yet, but the fact that he's been able to throw and play catch on flat ground multiple days is certainly encouraging. And so, Dave Roberts did say that it is still possible that he is potentially returning, at least on the first day he would be eligible. I think it's still maybe a couple days after that, just because the Dodgers are going to play it safe. I mean, one, Gonsolin had already gone past his career high in innings pitched. Two, the team is still storming ahead, like we just talked about earlier, towards clinching, not only clinching the NL West, but the best record in franchise history, and then eventually, presumably, the top seed in the National League, and then potentially all of baseball. So I don't see them rushing him back anytime.
Yeah, Dave asking, is it a phantom IL? We know it's not a phantom IL stint. We had Will Carroll, a.k.a. injury expert, from Twitter on our show, and he's plugged into a bunch of the trainers and medical people in the Dodgers, and they gave him reports sort of filling him in on what was going on. It was not a phantom IL stint, so for those wondering. All right, and then sort of the bit pieces, the lottery tickets floating around in the minors. Tommy Kahnle, Danny Duffy, a couple guys continuing to pitch in Oklahoma City. I believe Victor Gonzalez still on a rehab assignment. What can you tell us about some of those guys?
Yeah, so Dave Roberts was asked about them again over the weekend, and he said there's no set date for any of those three, but middle of September is what he would sort of guess. Like I have kept alluding to, I'm most skeptical in Victor Gonzalez and Danny Duffy, just because they haven't pitched at the major league level at all this year.
It seems reasonable because we've never seen it done before.
Right, and Duffy, if you want to stretch it back to when they acquired him at the trade deadline last season. Kahnle, I think, is the more likely of the three to potentially not only return, but also, maybe make an impact in the postseason. I think especially just in case if there does happen, if Brusdar Graterol doesn't maybe recover as they expect, Kahnle, I think, would slide into that kind of position in the bullpen.
Yeah. Okay. So there you go. There's our injury updates for you. Thanks, Matt. We appreciate keeping up to date. There's a lot of those to keep track of, guys, and headed in every direction. So let's close out the show with a few minutes worth of questions. I'll get to one that I just saw in the chat because I think it's a good one. Oh, Eric asked about Yency Almonte. He's a guy that we haven't gotten an update in like 3 or 4 weeks on. We're sort of getting up to the proposed timeline for 3 or 4 weeks ago, but as far as I can find, there's been no update. Is that fair?
I forgot what it was. I apologize for not having this information off the top of my head. He was supposed to also start throwing to test his elbow. He threw a bullpen session over the weekend. It was limited in what pitches he was throwing. If it went well, he was going to throw in another one maybe Monday or Tuesday and sort of incorporate his entire pitch mix. Okay. And if that also went well, then at that point, Dave Roberts said they would talk about, getting him to face batters in a simulated game.
Got it. Okay. All right, let's get to some questions here. One is an Austin Barnes question, which if you put an Austin Barnes question in there, you can bet I'm going to answer it. But I think it's a fair one. Austin Barnes is a guy, Matt, that we typically see playing time trend up as we get into the postseason. This is a guy that every year he seems on the outs, and then they just trust him because he catches the game well, et cetera, et cetera. So somebody's asking, is there a chance that Austin Barnes catches a bunch of these games and Will Smith moves to be the designated hitter? Obviously, you're not going to take Smith's bat out of the game. Do you think that's something the Dodgers are going to toy with come the postseason, or do you think it's going to be Will Smith every single day catching?
Yeah, I think Austin Barnes would probably average 2 starts per postseason series.
Wow.
And I think the majority of those, obviously, I think one we could lock in will be when Clayton Kershaw's on the mound. And I think he would catch another one of the pitchers. I'm not entirely sure which one. Maybe Gonsolin. I feel like they've paired them together semi-regularly. I could be misremembering that. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if Barnes averages, like I said, 2 starts per series.
Yeah, see, that would shock me. I'm going to be perfectly honest. And part of that is because if you move Will Smith to DH, that all sounds great, but then you've got to play the dominoes out. Okay, so then Justin Turner or Max Muncy, one of those 2 guys can't be DH. So do you move Muncy to second base and then Gavin Lux is getting taken out of the lineup? That would be a concern for me. I actually think this is the year where Austin Barnes is nowhere to be found in the postseason. I think Will Smith's bat 1,000% needs to be in there every game. And if you just go down the list, who are the guys that need to be in the lineup every single day? I think it's Smith. I think it's Freeman. I think it's Trey. I think it's Justin Turner. I think it's Max Muncy. I think it's Mookie Betts. And I think number 7 on that list is Gavin Lux. This is a guy who's top 15 in wins above replacement in the National League, or at least he was last time I checked. And so I look, you can love all of the things about Austin Barnes that you want to. Will Smith has improved defensively. He is not as good as a pitch caller or pitch framer or whatever as Austin Barnes, but he's fine. The bat is so much there. THP says one game. I think that would be the max for me. If it's more than one, there's going to be a riot in the Spiegel household. I'm just warning you about that one. I mean, I get like, I understand, and we do it every year, and it's sort of like if you just keep predicting against it every year and you're wrong every year, then maybe you should change your opinion, but we'll see. David asks, do we have enough starting pitching to win it all, Matt? Do the Dodgers have enough starting pitching to win the World Series?
If Tony Gonsolin comes back healthy, which, I mean, signs are pointing to that he will, but that still is a little bit of a question mark. If he does, if Heaney stays healthy, then, well, although I think he'll end up in the bullpen. So, yeah, I guess it sort of hinges on Gonsolin, and I think May being effective is how I would answer that. But, again, I was kind of the outlier at the trade deadline. I was saying trade for a starting pitcher because the Dodgers, in my opinion, were putting way too many eggs in the basket of needing Walker Buehler to not only come back, but be effective. And now he's not even coming back at all. Potentially counting on Andrew Heaney to stay healthy through October. Who knows if he'll even be in the rotation, and also, needing Dustin May to now pitch well. And Dustin May's importance has increased tenfold with Buehler going down. And so it's definitely a fair question and a fair concern. And it's one that I was trying to tell Jeff and Daniel about at the trade deadline, but they didn't want to listen.
See, and what Jeff and Daniel probably responded with is the Dodgers currently have the number 2 guy in all of Major League Baseball in ERA. That's Tony Gonsolin. This is if you go down to 125 or more innings pitched this year. They have the number 2 pitcher. They have the number 6 pitcher. That's Julio Urias. They have the number 14 pitcher. That's Tyler Anderson. And then they have Clayton Kershaw. Those are their 4. And then they have Dustin May. Those are their 5. And so for me, to your point, I think Gonsolin is a wild card here because what are we getting with his elbow? I think that's a fair question. But even if Gonsolin can't go, if you tell me I've got Urias, I've got Kershaw, I've got Anderson, and Dustin May, and those are my 4. That's enough pitching to win a World Series in my book. And that's going against the trend of where Gonsolin's updates have been coming. If Gonsolin comes back, then we've got 5 guys we trust, plus Heaney, who's a strikeout machine that gives up a bunch of home runs, but a strikeout machine who's going to be in the bullpen anyways. I mean, for me, like if Dustin May is where he's at, if you tell me my front 3 is May, Urias, and Kershaw, that is elite starting pitching. Like who's the non-elite pitcher in those 3?
That's definitely fair. I think if you're leveraging like May's potential, and I'm not doubting. Like I think I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you. My calculation was more from the standpoint of the Dodgers rolled the dice on sort of everything going right. Yeah. And thus far, like you could argue everything has kind of gone wrong. Like not obviously Walker Buehler being the biggest loss, and then right after that, Tony Gonsolin going on the IL. So that was just my biggest concern. I think they definitely have the depth in terms of number of starting pitchers, but quality, health, all that stuff, that was where I kind of felt like, hey, like get a starter just to shore this up just in case. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't discount that. My argument, we've had this, we don't have to have it again, is just like if you give me 6 guys and I need 4 of them to be healthy, like 4 of those guys I feel incredibly, like if I give you those 6, right, of Kershaw, Urias, Gonsolin, Anderson, May, Heaney, like of those 6, we've got 5 of them healthy right now, with Gonsolin being the 6th, Kershaw and May just recently coming back. So of those 6, you need 4 postseason pitchers. If you tell me, guarantee me that 4 of those guys are going to be healthy, and as long as Julio is one of them, like I feel pretty good about those 4. And there's a best case scenario in there where it's Julio and it's Kershaw and it's May who looks good, and then it's Gonsolin who's number 2 in all Major League Baseball in ERA. And that might not be as sexy on a sort of a marquee as some of these other names, but from a performance on the field perspective, those are guys that match up. Okay, let's get to one last question here, and it's from Nicholas D. Should Cody Bellinger sit in the postseason? We sort of danced around this. We talked about Vargas. We talked about Trace Thompson. We talked about Joey Gallo. We even talked a little positivity about Chris Taylor, believe it or not. Should Cody Bellinger sit in the postseason? Should Cody Bellinger... I'll rephrase. Should Cody Bellinger be the everyday center fielder for the Dodgers in the postseason?
if anybody who's watched any of these shows has seen, they're not going to be surprised by my answer that he absolutely should be in the lineup. And I 100% understand the struggles he's had during the season. I've been on here repeatedly saying, like, unfortunately, like, this is kind of who he is, right? Until he proves otherwise again, like, this is just the player he is. But I value what he brings defensively. I don't think that can be overlooked at all. I mean, not only is I think Jerry Harrison said it the other night on Sportsnet LA when he was kind of going on an impassioned, kind of rant about Bellinger needing to change some stuff at the plate. And it was from a standpoint of Hairston caring for him and wanting to see him succeed. But he said, he's arguably the best center fielder in baseball, defensively, which I completely agree with. And I think in the postseason, one, the Dodgers value defense, period. Two, they definitely do in the postseason. And so I think that will keep him in the lineup pretty much every day. And I've come around to your side of things a little bit where, honestly, I am at the point where I would start Trace Thompson in left field every day as well against left and right-handed pitching, because against lefties, first of all, he's hitting righties better than he is lefties. And, if it's not him in left field, is it going to be Joey Gallo, who, like we touched on earlier, is struggling? So
he's not hitting anybody.
Right. And, like, why are you going to sit Trace just because of a perceived platoon advantage when he's a reverse splits guy right now? And against lefties, he hit a home run on Sunday night off a left-handed pitcher. He, like you said earlier, he historically has. But I would just give him that opportunity to start in left field. And if you need somebody to hit move Chris Taylor to second base to kind of platoon there with Gavin Lux.
Yeah, here's how I would put it. My take on Trace Thompson is well documented. He needs to be left fielder every single day, period, end of story. If Miguel Vargas wants to hit 270 the rest of the year and shows that he can play some level of competent defense in left field, then fine. He can hit against lefties. But Trace Thompson needs to be in there against righties every day. I have wavered on Bellinger as the center fielder, and here's what I mean. Bellinger is, as weird as it sounds, you know exactly what you're getting with Cody Bellinger. You're getting fantastic defense, elite defense, and you're getting a guy who is a mediocre hitter. At best, he is league average with some pop. And also, to be fair, you're getting a guy who has come up with the biggest hits in multiple postseasons. He had the biggest hit in 2020 and the biggest hit in 2021 in the postseason. And so that has to count for something. He's been there. He's done that. He is right down the middle as far as I'm concerned. The question with Bellinger is not, can he raise to some level? We know who he is. The question is, are any of the guys around him going to take his spot? Is Joey Gallo going to perform so well offensively that the Dodgers have to consider moving Trace Thompson to center field and putting Joey Gallo in left? Is Chris Taylor going to perform so well offensively that they're going to consider putting him in center field? Is Miguel Vargas going to hit so well against lefties, right? Like, those are the questions. It's not, is Cody going to go up or down? He's right here. Is Joey Gallo going to raise his level? Is Chris Taylor going to raise his level? At one point, the answer on Gallo was yes, and I was on board with Gallo because he came to the Dodgers, he started to hit, the power was there. All of a sudden, it's like, holy smokes, the Dodgers did it again. Well, now he's 1 for his last 19 heading into today's game. Again, I think he was 1 for 3. So 2 for his last 22 in this one. The defense isn't there. And so I'm back to Bellinger hasn't moved, and all the rest of these guys have fallen beneath him. Chris Taylor's still swinging and missing at everything. Gallo is swinging and missing at everything, not hitting for average. And so to me, yes, Bellinger is going to play in the postseason. He's elite defensively at an incredibly important position. Center field is the most important defensive position in the outfield. It's the most difficult position to play. And the Dodgers are not going to take chances there. They might take chances in left field. Okay, we've seen them do it with Gavin Lux. Yep. They might take chances at second base. They're not going to take chances at shortstop. They're not going to take chances at center field. And so, to me, that's a long way of saying today, Cody Bellinger is going to play every day in the outfield, as far as I'm concerned. And unless Joey Gallo hits 270 with 10 bombs in the last 30 games, or unless Chris Taylor becomes peak Chris Taylor out of nowhere in the last 30 games, I don't see any way that that's going to change.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think, maybe if they're facing some really tough left-hander who he's struggled with throughout his career, maybe at that point they make a change in the lineup. But short of something like that, I think, like you just said, and like I agreed with you, that he'll be starting every day.
Yeah, and somebody said, should he play is the question. Okay, the answer is yes, because there's not a better option out there. No. When you factor in offense, he's basically even with Taylor, and he's basically even with Gallo. And you factor in defense, he's much better at that. So it's a pretty straightforward argument for me. Again, if one of those guys can be dramatically better offensively, let's have a conversation. I think Trace can play a competent center field. I think Chris Taylor can play a competent center field. Not Bellinger level, but again, if you can be 25% better offensively and 25% worse defensively, I'm willing to have the conversation. But neither of those guys is enough of a difference maker on offense to justify the downgrade defensively is the way that I'm seeing it. So, hey, we appreciate you joining us. Matt, anything on the DodgerBlue.com side of things that we need to plug? You mentioned a bunch of post-game content from Sunday's game is already up on our YouTube channel, so you can check that. We've got a recap as well. One of our credentialed writers was there covering the game, so he's got a game recap, I'm sure, that is up on the, or maybe you've got the game recap up, I'm not sure, but anything else on DodgerBlue.com people should check out?
No, just keep reading along with us as always. We appreciate it. We have a video from the Turner Trot that was held Sunday morning. That's
which
also,
you did not run in.
I did not run. I had to.
Don't tell me you had to cover it. We needed a first-person experience, Matt.
So I would have set like the course record had I ran it.
You should have.
But I needed to work.
Yeah.
But my wife did run it. This was her second year doing it for me, so that I could work and cover it.
Yeah. I think it counts cowardly is all I'm saying. I think you could have ran it, and I mean it's a 5K, right?
Yeah.
Like as fast as it sounds like you are. I mean, we're talking about 20 minutes. 25 minutes, like you couldn't have carved out 25 minutes to run a 5K for a good cause, Matt, and then just covered it before and after?
Well, see, then I would have been all sweaty and trying to do like interviews and stuff like that. Like it just wouldn't have worked out.
It would have been, I think, next year, I think you give us a first-person account of it. I would have been there if not for living, a whole state away. So, but yeah, some great content there. Shout out to Justin, Courtney Turner for their work on that one. A couple updates. We are doing a watch along again on Tuesday night, so make sure you join us for that one. That's against the Giants. We didn't get into this week's game, but Giants and Padres. So we talked about the Mets and Padres being fun opponents. Giants and Padres should be just as good. Tuesday, we're doing a watch along. Friday, we're doing another watch along for that game against the Padres. Dustin May, again, currently the projected starter according to ESPN. That's not official, but 2 watch alongs to be looked up for there. And then on our YouTube channel, make sure you subscribe, ring the notification bell, Dodger Blue 1958. We started posting Dodgers daily videos every weekday. There's a game. I'm on there. Scott Gehrman joins me sometimes. We preview that night's game. We talk about the pitching matchup. We talk about the betting lines. And I'm just going to say we're positive money. If you throw a little money on every single bet we've suggested, you would have more money in your pocket today than you did 2 weeks ago. And we're trending in the right direction. We're coming off a 2-for-2 night, I believe, on Friday. So check that out tomorrow morning. We'll have another Dodgers Daily for you on Labor Day. We're working on Labor Day over here, winning some money. So Dodgers Daily, make sure you subscribe. Hey, we appreciate you again for joining us. That's Matt Moreno. My name is Jeff Spiegel. Enjoy the rest of your night. Enjoy Labor Day. Enjoy hopefully a day off for most of you. And we'll see you some content tomorrow, and then we'll see you at that watch along on Tuesday as well. Have a good one.